Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing show. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for what's going to be another great episode. Now, if you're enjoying this show, do me one little favor, okay? Leave us that 5-star rating and review. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, we are going to be talking to Chiagozie Fawole. Chiagozie began her real estate investing journey during her medical training as an anesthesiology resident in Brooklyn, New York. Now, after her first attempt to flip a property 300 miles away, she decided to turn to a more stable life of rental properties, getting a 12-unit apartment complex as her first deal. Now she's a pediatric anesthesiologist in Syracuse, and she blends her love for rehab and rentals by focusing on off-market multifamily properties that need work. She is the founder of Savvy Docs and Real Estate, a platform to help other physicians get started building profitable rental portfolios. Let's welcome to the show, Chiagozie Fawole.
Thanks for having me, John. I'm super excited to be on with your audience.
Absolutely. Thank you. So if my editor is as good as I know he is, you guys won't know how many times I tried to say her name and had to redo it. But for the record, can you pronounce it one more time just to make sure I said it right?
Yeah, Chiagozie Fawole.
All right. Good. Why don't you take a couple of minutes and give us a bit more context on your background?
Okay, so, well, I'm a physician by training, originally Nigerian, but moved here when I was 16. It was all on the straight and narrow. Went from undergrad, Howard University, med school, Johns Hopkins. Eventually began residency, and up to that point, I was completely medicine focused. I didn't have any other extracurriculars. And then I was watching TV one day. I was watching Flip or Flop, and I saw these guys. I saw these guys make $60,000 on one flip, and I was like, "Wait, hold up! These guys just made my entire salary as a resident in one episode." Now, I understand that one episode is probably 8 to 12 weeks, who knows? But that blew my mind and got me intrigued. So I used the Brooklyn traffic situation to get into, listening to all the podcasts, audiobooks, all of that as I drove to and from work. But then there was one problem. Things were so expensive in Brooklyn. So after about a year of searching to no avail, I tried to venture out into other parts of New York. And that was when first of all, I did a flip down in Norfolk, which was, I'm pretty far away. That ended up being more of an education than profitable. But then I found that Rochester, New York was actually a much more affordable market. And that was where we got our first two deals, actually, because we ended up closing on two on the same day, our personal home and the 12 unit I talked about. Yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, congrats on getting started. I love hearing about your story, man. I specifically always get a little bit of excitement whenever I hear somebody talk about moving to this country, with a focus, right? And you were so locked in on medicine, becoming a doctor. That was your life. You're watching, HGTV and Flip or Flop, and you're like, wait a minute. I'm doing all this work, going to school, doing all the residency, all of this stuff, and these dudes they just made $60,000 in an episode. Wait a minute, what is this? Tell me more. So that sparked the intrigue, right? And from there, you go down the path. And shout out to Brooklyn and New York as a whole. It's one of our biggest listening audiences. So great thing to know about the New York area. There are a couple things you mentioned that first flip was more educational than profitable. Let's start there.
Yeah.
What do you think went wrong? And I shouldn't start there. Let me back up. Why do you think that first flip served as more of an education than being a profitable thing? What are some challenges that you encountered and things that you learned along the way?
So I tell people you need that first deal, because the first deal is really what teaches you what the books can't teach you, what the podcast, what the shows cannot teach you. But one thing I actually learned from that first deal was that I actually knew my stuff more than I realized that I did. For example, I was able to run to give a rehab estimate just from pictures and videos that were spot on with what the contractor ended up quoting us. And based on my numbers, I came up with what my maximum allowable offer will be on that property. But when I spoke with the realtor, she said, "Oh, no, no, no. If you make that offer, they'll say no." So I felt she was more experienced, and so I deferred to her. And our loss ended up being just about, like, if we had gone with my numbers, we would either not have gotten the property at all, or we would have just broken even. So I mean, when I say it was more of an education, number one, it helped me get more confident about what I knew, and helped me kind of realize, okay, you need to understand what other people have to gain in the transaction, and understand that you need to look out for your own interests. I love the people that I work with. I try to work with, really great people, but they're in business, right? So for realtors, for example, like they're great. They try to work in your best interest, but at the end of the day, you need to think about how the numbers work for you, as against trying to make people feel happy, or like you, or things like that. So yeah, that's, I mean, we learned a ton from that. Yeah.
Unfortunately, your first flip sounds very similar to my first flip, where, I had the book knowledge, right? I had the book smarts, and I felt pretty confident with the knowledge I had, but I ended up partnering with somebody who had more real experience, right? And they had flipped dozens and dozens of homes. And as a matter of fact, they had 5 homes they were doing at that very moment. So we ended up going with them, even though it didn't pass the 70% rule and some of these other things in the flipping space. And lo and behold, as things started to crumble, I ended up picking up the pieces, and my first flip served as education as well. So I share that bond with you. Specifically, I do love what you said, though, about one, you need that first deal because the first deal teaches you what the books can't teach you. I think it's a very powerful insight. And we have to recognize that these things are not necessarily failures because they didn't work as we thought they were going to work. They just serve as education. There are things that you learn from, you get some feedback, you grow. It won't break you. It won't end you. Even if you lose money, it doesn't end you. You just get some education and you move forward with that newfound education. And you also talked about making offers based on your knowledge and what you were comfortable with, not necessarily going with what the realtor did, which was the lesson you took away from this experience, right? And I think it's really important too. When you are investing, everyone has something to gain, whether that's your broker, the lender, a partner, all the people have something to gain. So you need to make sure you're comfortable with the deal as it sits, what's being presented. Because if not, you're going to have a little bit of remorse or feel like, hey, I really wish it was this. So you have to be comfortable and you have to be willing to walk away. If the perspectives, if the projections don't fit your criteria, it's okay to walk away. Don't feel like, this is the only deal you're ever going to see. And if you don't buy it for this amount, you're just going to continue to sit stagnant. Stay active and aggressive, but make sure that you feel comfortable taking action. So I love the lessons that you took away from that experience. And it really, I know, helped mold you into kind of the next stage of what you were doing. So that flip is done. I know when you and I first interacted some years back, it was around a 12 unit. Tell me about this 12 unit.
So as a matter of fact, even tying back to that first deal, while I was doing that, I was talking about my activities, right? So when I decided to go on to pursue this 12 unit, I had built, as crazy as it sounds, a little bit of street cred that I was now able to, leverage when talking with my future investors. At the time I was a resident, I had no money. Okay, when I say I didn't have any money saved, just point blank. So, and with that 12 unit, I had to raise a considerable amount for me at the time. So I reached out to friends and family, and based on what they had heard me talk about with the deal in Norfolk, a few of them actually were willing to trust me with with their funds, and we ended up closing on this 12 unit in Rochester, New York. It was a turnkey type purchase. At the time, I felt there was room for value add. I thought we could raise the rents. I thought we could do all these, fantastic things. But even as it was, it cash flowed, which was all I needed at the time. The plan was for a 3 to 5 year hold and possible refinance or sale, depending on how things went. As time went on, I kind of came to the conclusion that a refinance would probably not really be in our best interest. We should probably just sell when the market was right. So we ended up holding it for about 4 years, and by June, and in June we sold it for a profit. Yeah.
Talk to me about that decision-making tree, for someone else who's looking at that. And I think the exit strategy is something that very few people talk about. So as you looked at this deal, you thought there was going to be some value add potential. It sounds like maybe you pivoted your strategy a couple of times. Do we refinance? Do we sell it? Walk me through what you were thinking at each stage and what influenced the decision to say, hey, you know what, instead of going this route, let's go this route.
So prior to purchasing it, I spoke with a couple of property managers and other people in the space, and I got the sense that there was room to raise the rents. But then after we bought it and we actually, tried to raise the rents, it seemed like the market wasn't actually biting at those higher rents. So we kind of kept things as they were. We cash flowed for a while, but then once winter hit in Rochester, we had this huge boiler in the basement that was really energy inefficient, and it ate up a ton of our cash flow. The property ended up carrying itself, which for me was okay. So I didn't have to reach back out to investors, but it wasn't cash flowing as much as I had anticipated that it would. So the first couple of, after a few years, I was like, well, guys, this thing is not cash flowing as much. Should we sell? But they felt we should hold a little longer, kind of see where things were. And I'm actually glad that I was with others, because I'll probably have bailed a lot, a lot sooner. But they felt we should hold longer. So we did. And thankfully, appreciation actually just worked in our favor, that the market in Rochester just took off. And by the end of last year, so end of 2019, I got a call, actually mid 2019, I got a call that we had a fire in the building. and so, but thankfully no one was hurt. The whole building had to be shut down for a number of months. Thankfully, insurance was able to cover all of that. And we ended up with a fairly brand new building. So at that point I said, listen, guys, I was ready to sell this like 3 years ago. Now I'm really ready to sell this thing. And we're able to, tap into the appreciation in the market, plus a relatively brand new building. I'm able to sell it.
Yeah. How many units were impacted by the fire?
So everyone had to vacate. Like
so the entire building basically
was shut down. Yeah.
And then you had to renovate all the units, or what?
Yeah. We had to redo the electric. It was essentially like a gut rehab. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. What? So the insurance policy took care of that. I guess two questions there. One, what was the total cost to rebuild this apartment building? Let's start there. What was that cost?
The entire renovation was about $150,000.
Okay.
We essentially had to open up walls and redo the electric wiring, because once it damaged one end, they had to do the whole thing. The apartments that were not directly impacted ended up just requiring smoke abatement or whatever that's
the
called.
remediation there. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. But by the time, and then some roof work for where the firefighters had to get into the property.
Okay. So not a complete gut rehab, but certainly
Right,
substantial where you had to go in and do a ton of repairs.
right.
And then from an insurance standpoint, most people don't really think that deeply about their insurance policies until something like this happens. And you're like,
Mhm.
oh, crap, like I hope this is covered and, we're going to get paid. What did you learn going through that process, at least about the insurance policy and just any lessons that you took away from going through that scare?
I think before then, I would never have thought that any property that had my name attached to it would have a fire. So I'll always go with the lesser policies, like just market value. But on that one, thankfully, again, if you remember, it was my first rental ever. So I got the maximum, I got full replacement cost insurance on that one. And now I think, I mean, any property that I have anyone's money in, that, I mean, that'll be my go-to now. Like, just
Yep.
not to replace it. Yeah.
Get the replacement cost. Awesome. So I think the other question that jumped out to me was you talked about the business plan pivoting a couple times.
Mhm.
I want to go back to the earlier stages where you said you were unable to raise rents. What happened in your evaluation where you went from, okay, hey, I think we can do this. Then you try to raise rents, you got some pushback, winter came. Like where do you think disconnect was, or what happened when you actually tried to raise rents, and what would you do differently in that process?
Yeah. So I think initially a lot of decision making was again, remember, it was my first deal, and I don't use it as a cop out, but I relied heavily on people I was working with. Rentometer had used that at some point to kind of gauge rents, but I think at the end of the day, um, maybe the units were a little smaller. They were studios, so if you think of demographics that would rent studios in in the city, probably I'm different from those that rent a one bedroom. So more transitional people, and and then once we actually like got the place and tested it, the cost of vacancy was higher than the cost of trying to eke up another 15, 20, 30 um, dollars. So we ended up going more for occupancy as against pushing it all the way.
Makes sense, right? So basically, and this is an important lesson, right? So yes, you can probably hold out 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and get an additional $20, but you now have to factor in the 6 weeks that you didn't get rent.
And
I mean, if you missed rent, which was $800, versus just keeping that resident who was there paying $800 to try to get $850. I mean, you now have to, make up that $50 over the, I mean, some math person is going to look at this quickly. I
yeah,
don't know off the top of my head, but whatever $50 is, I think it's 16 months. You
mm-hmm.
now need 16 months before you can, say that you're breaking even just in keeping a resident. So if that resident leaves after a year, you still didn't break even. So sometimes you have to play with it and say, does it make sense to push rents or to focus on retention and retaining residents? So it sounds like you played with it, but ultimately decided, hey, let's just focus on retention because that's going to keep our cash flow stronger versus, pushing rents, trying to push rents on these units. So great lesson there for anyone who's looking at, pushing rents. You also have to factor in that vacancy factor and what does that do to your overall collections for the year.
And I
Let's
think
fast forward. Oh, go ahead,
yeah,
please.
if we were doing any significant rehab, then the chances of being able to raise those rents would have been more realistic. Like after the fire, we were actually able to raise the rents. Like when the fire happened, yes, we did, because
Yeah.
everything now looked completely brand new. And
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. And that's it. You're going to have to justify it. It sounds, I mean, it is what it is. But if you have a product and it used to cost X and you're trying to charge more for it, people are going to want to know why it now costs more money.
mm-hmm.
And you need to have something to justify that. And it doesn't have to be, anything elaborate. You don't have to spend $10,000 in a unit, but you need to have a reason to justify it, especially if it's above the market value of what the competitive set is doing. So you kind of have to keep your eye on your competitors, see what they're charging for rent, and offer that value if you're trying to retain those residents, especially for current residents, because they're like, what do you mean? My room's $800. Now you want to charge me $850. Did you give me another $50 worth of value somewhere? So if not, you're going to get a lot of pushback there. So definitely make sure that you are demonstrating that value if you are going to try to push rents. I want to transition a little bit though, because you have got, since then, you've expanded, you've grown what you've been doing. And I know that you now focus more of your energy in helping other doctors get into the space through your Savvy Docs program. Can you talk to me about why you decided to launch Savvy Docs?
So well, a number of things. Started out with, just being on Facebook groups, for example, and kind of seeing the conversations happening and, people posting their deals. And I'm thinking, that deal doesn't cash flow. That's, just kind of cringing sometimes at the deals that I was seeing. And I was like, you know what? You can call my experience what you will, but it looks like I actually have something to offer my colleagues. And as time went on, just kind of watching what was happening in the medical space, doctors really losing a lot of the autonomy that they probably had in the past. A lot of there's been a lot of shifts, should I say, in medicine that have left a lot of physicians feeling frustrated, feeling like they don't have options, like they would like to either leave or do something else, but because they have that one great paying job and they haven't had time to build any other additional income streams, they feel stuck. And after hearing that a lot, I was like, okay, well, the one income stream that I know actually works is income stream from real estate. That even if you don't have any other skills, you can just buy a property, just make sure that it cash flows. When you buy a property, you buy the next one. But I mean, over time, saying 4 or 5 years, if you just go the slow and steady route, you can build a portfolio that cash flows enough to the point that if, for example, you had to leave your job for either moral or just straight up annoyance reasons, you would have something to fall back on. And I guess this one thing after the other, I also had a mentor that kind of pointed out what happened in a place like Texas, where 17 doctors just came to work one morning and were told that their jobs were gone. And I mean, when I tell you that in general, doctors don't really do side gigs, like just as in general. So when you just have somebody get terminated from what they thought was a safe and a secure job, one that will take them through retirement, it can be quite devastating. So all of those things put together, I tell you, you know what, we'll start this. And so far, I've been helping physicians, but just learn the basics of real estate investing, and also helping them work through their first few deals. Yeah.
I think it's amazing to help provide that service. And, one of the things we like to talk about is understanding who you serve. And for you were uniquely positioned to help fellow doctors. And you kind of mentioned this. I don't know if our listeners picked up on it, but you mentioned people could say whatever about your experience and how much experience you have, but you noticed something that was happening and decided to step in. And a lot of times people will stop and they won't take action because they feel like they're not ready, or they don't have the experience, or they're not credible. Who am I to go and teach other people how to invest if I've only done X amount of deals, right? Mm-hmm. And it's something that's limiting belief that can hold a lot of people back from getting started. But you ultimately overcame that because it wasn't about you. It was about these doctors who needed some options, who were, completely just thrown out there trying to figure out what to do, and for some of these people, you said they felt stuck. They weren't really, they're not the side gig guys. I mean, you don't go to school all those hours and do residency to go get a side gig, to be an Uber driver at night. That's not really the doctor lifestyle. So recognizing that they still needed an avenue to create passive income, to create an additional stream of income that can support them and their family, you took it upon yourself to help serve those people. And I want people to think about it from that standpoint, because you may be in a position to help people, or maybe you're just a step ahead of them. maybe you've never done a deal, but you have friends and family members who are looking at ways to either invest or supplement their income or have the same, job security issues or concerns that you just raised. And if you're looking to do something, maybe you don't have all the expertise, but maybe the knowledge you do have could serve some other people, and you kind of owe it to try to help out people, especially if you care about them. Talk a little bit more about, I guess, just that, right? Just overcoming that mindset where you looked at your own experience and you're talking to these doctors, and then ultimately saying, you know what, I am just going to do it.
Oh yeah. Every I wish I would say it was an easy mindset thing to just turn it on and turn it off, but it's something that I deal with on a daily basis. Like even after this time, having worked with physicians, like every now and then I have to remind myself, okay, this is why you're doing this. Like you've actually done this. Like you actually, okay. So even if that first deal didn't go well, you actually did actually pulled off a renovation all the way from New York in Norfolk, and the house is still standing. Or actually you actually were able to pull off purchasing a 12-unit apartment complex with just $900 out of pocket. Like these guys have money. I'm sitting down, and they don't know how to do any creative financing and all that. Like I have to remind myself of the things that I've done, that others just may not have done or even thought to think was even even possible. And like you said, when you have the person that you're helping in mind in front of you, you get over yourself.
No, listen, I think that's very powerful, right? If you can focus on the other person, the problem you're helping to solve, it's easier to overcome those limiting beliefs or those fears because it's not about you, it's about them.
Mhm.
And whatever your experience is, if you have that experience, you have wins. You have to give yourself credit for what you do have.
Yeah.
Too often we focus on what we haven't done or what we don't know, but you know a lot more than you give yourself credit for. And focus on that. Focus on what you do know. That makes it a little bit easier to move forward. Give me a win. I mean, you work with a lot of people now through the Savvy Docs platform. What has that experience been like for you? And has there been a win or something that's really just given you fulfillment to say this was the right choice to go down this pathway and serve other people?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I have this doctor that I've worked with. When she first started with me back in January, she was a complete um, newbie beginner, and she was off to the races. So she got her first deal under contract in 5 weeks, and I thought, that's great. But mid COVID, sometime in June, she comes up and she's like, "Oh yeah, I found a 6 unit as well. Oh, by the way, it cash flows. Yes, okay, that's great. But I got it at $40,000 less than asking." I was like, "Whoa!" So now she has. I mean, I say to people that she has 9 people paying her rent within a year of having gotten started. When she happened to just drop her cash flow numbers just by accident in one of our last conversations, and I mean, I had googly eyes because I was like, "Oh my goodness." I mean, I was happy enough that she got a 6 unit property plus a single family home that she split into 3 rental, leasing units. But when I heard how much cash flow she was making, even from that, I'm like, that's great. Do this a couple of times, and you have a good, monthly nest egg, should I say? Um, and she's continuing. Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. And you were able to help her go from complete newbie to, two buildings, nine, it sounds like what, 6 plus 3, 9 units total
Yeah.
that she's now getting some rental income from.
Yeah.
And all that during COVID, right? And in less than, 7 or 8 months.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal to hear that success. Any tips or advice for someone who maybe they're in the spot that you were in where they're like, hey, I see a lot of people around. Maybe it's in my industry, maybe it's friends or family members, and I want to create something to help them, but maybe they're questioning their own experience or their own credibility. Any thoughts or words of encouragement there?
The first thing that I would say is to understand the value of what you have. And the second thing would be also watch the way you talk about other people that are doing similar things. Like, for example, some people out there kind of bash coaches. They're like, oh yeah, everybody's a coach, everybody is this, everybody is that. But the thing is, if you have experience that you're not bringing out to the world and giving people the opportunity to learn from you, you're actually holding back and withholding good from them. There's also money mindset issues where people kind of feel that, you know what, I don't think I should be paid to help people. But listen, if Walmart decided not to charge anybody anything, for example, they'll be out of business. Their employees will be out in the street. So if you're the kind of person that loves to teach, loves to mentor, loves to actually do that, don't be afraid in letting people know that you're available to help them. And don't be afraid charging an amount for it, because that's what, it's your time. It's time that you could, I'm a mom, I have 2 kids already. So any time that I'm spending away from them is time that I really could just be doing my real estate. Trust me. I really could just be doing real estate. But yeah, just understand that even providing a service that is paid in some cases is service. It doesn't have to be free for it to be service. Those are just a couple of thoughts that come to mind.
Yeah, and I think what you said there, especially the part about how you manage your time. If you're a mom, your dad, you have kids. Most people get into real estate because they want, some supplemental income, or they want to have something if in case their W-2 job falls away, or maybe they want to quit their W-2 job and they want real estate to be it, but they're looking for some sense of freedom, some sense of breaking away from the current financial structure, and they want financial independence. So if you're doing that, but you're still, spending most of your time on the phone or emailing other people and giving them free advice, are you really being true to what you say you want? And I had the same issue. My wife actually saw me one day talking to someone, and I talked to this guy for like an hour, and it was me pouring into that person, but not getting very much back in return. And she's like, you got to stop doing that, because she said, you're not valuing your time. And if you don't value your time, no one else is going to value your time. And I thought that was really powerful. And it kind of helped me just shift that perception on how we spend our time. And the thing is, if you're coaching other people, and again, to your point, people say everyone's a coach. Well, everyone also wants free information. Everybody always wants to pick your brain. Everybody always wants to go grab coffee. Everybody, so there's 2 sides, and there's value, and it's okay. You have to start saying no to people, or putting a value on it. And it doesn't have to be monetary necessarily, but you have to figure out on your end, how do you add value back to me? So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And it's not just me telling you all the secrets that, maybe you spent the last 5-6 years breaking down that flip, breaking down that 12-unit deal, breaking down, how to launch your coaching program. Like, people love to hear how you do it so they can do it, but are they willing to make it mutually beneficial to share that expertise or share that time? And again, it's not, there are certainly people out there who only want $1, who will charge you, X amount of dollars to show them. I'm not talking about that. I'm just simply talking about an exchange of value where you recognize that if I sit down, or, if you sit down and share some information with them, that's you giving to them. What are you going to get back? You want to get something back. So again, it's worth your time, and it's that simple, and people can call it whatever they want, but they have no problem going to Walmart, like you said, and handing someone money for the convenience they gave them to be able to grab a product off the shelf, which yes, you could have just went to the farm directly and got it, right? So, but you paid a premium to get it from Walmart. It's the same concept. So, all right. So, I think you talked about kind of your experience, right, in coming into the space, and there's kind of this credibility question that some folks may have, and, some people may push back. And I want to ask, when you get prospective clients who are maybe thinking about working with you, but they have some questions, maybe they have questions on the price tag, maybe they have questions on the experience, how do you typically handle that? Or how do you, work with someone who has some objections to paying for your program?
The the first thing is I usually start with asking the questions and have them set their goals. Okay, so what do you want to do? Well, I hate my job. I'm trying to leave my job, and in like some will say, oh, I'm ready to be done with this job in 3 months, and I'm like, well, I can't help you. I can't help you leave your job in 3 months. But then when I hear realistic goals, like, okay, in the next 5 years or something, I would like to have built out a portfolio that's helping me do X, Y, Z. I ask them how their cash flow goals are. They tell me, and then I also show them the risk of going into real estate blind. My very first deal, like I said, for me, I'm like, in that first deal, one sentence could have saved me $10,000. If somebody had simply told me, you don't have to buy this deal, I would still have had $10,000 plus interest in my pocket today. So when I'm able to kind of show them their goals and what they have at stake, if they don't get started, then they don't hit those goals. If they get started, but then they just kind of bumble their way through it, they'll end up losing more than I would ever have possibly even charged them. So, you could either spend it on actual education, or you could spend it on a painful type of education. It's usually one way or the other. But at the end of the day, I try to focus more on their goals and have them place a value of what that's worth to them. And at the end of the day, I'm also comfortable knowing that it's not everybody that will work with me. So,
I think that's the key, right? I mean, you understand who you serve, and once you understand who you serve, you can get clarity. And I love how you said, if someone's goal is to quit their job in 3 months, you're like, all right, it's good talking to you. Good luck. Because that's not something that you can help someone with. And I think we always have to approach it with that mindset of service. Who are you trying to help? Who can you help? Who is your ideal target investor? Who's your ideal target client? And serve those people and serve them well, and the rest will really take care of itself. Really great tips there. Before we transition to our Bullseye Round, I do want to talk to you about the markets. We've talked about Rochester, New York a little bit. I know we hinted at Brooklyn. Where are you focusing your investments right now?
So right now we're smack dab in Syracuse, New York. We focus on small multifamily properties. Although this year, as I'm going into it, I've actually set my eyes now to kind of venture back into flips. In which case we'll be doing more single family flips with a few holds in between.
And tell me about Syracuse as a market. What are you seeing there?
Oh, still very hot up here. Properties are flying off the shelves as they come on. We just got one under contract that was literally like, whoo, by the grace of God. Like you go for a showing and you still see like 4 or 5 people coming in, like a trail of cars right behind you. And I think just how hot the market has been up here, I kind of just pulled back and started focusing more on off-market properties. So driving for dollars, just working my network, asking people, hey, if you know anyone that's trying to sell, I'm trying to buy. And I've gotten a few leads that way. Haven't really, the last few that we got were either from wholesalers or from driving for dollars. But the one we just had under contract now was from the MLS.
Awesome. It sounds like Syracuse is still a hot market, still places to invest in, working all those angles to try to come across some deals. Let's move on to our Bullseye Round. You ready?
Yeah.
Give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
Well, I talked about the flip. I know I've talked about that one a lot. But let me see if there's some. Actually, as a matter of fact, in medicine, so I applied during med school. I applied to become a neurosurgery resident. And I say that the miracle of my life is that I did not get a neurosurgery spot, because number one, I would have been bored out of my mind by now because it's a 7-year training. But not getting into neurosurgery allowed me to then get into anesthesiology residency, which was shorter, but also allowed me mental space to then do the other things in my life. And I could not be more grateful. Yeah.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
Oh, PropStream.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Never Split the Difference.
Give me a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals.
Praying in the morning.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
That one I didn't think of. Actually, I guess to actually trust what I know. I mean, to keep investing in myself, but to just trust what I know and go.
What are you curious about right now?
Oh, right now, how to stay on, to work on my goals, see my goals all the way to the end. That's the one thing I'm reading about, learning about. Yeah.
All right, so you're in Syracuse. I want the best place to grab a bite in Syracuse, New York.
Kirby's Tap House.
Say it again. Kirby's?
Kirby's Tap House.
All right, let's check that spot out. All right, you've given us a lot of great information. I enjoyed hearing your story from the flip, more specifically that 12 unit, and just all the craziness that deal did. I mean, it sounds like you could write a book simply on that 12 unit, right? And just the fire and all the different decision making and getting to a point where the deal still, cash flow, sold, made you good money, allowed you to kind of transition to some other things. And then hearing about Savvy Docs as well, listening to you overcome those limiting beliefs that some may have and launching that platform and helping other people, really focusing on the service of others as opposed to, your own experience and what you have to offer. I think that's just phenomenal and a great reminder for people too, that, if you're focusing on other people, you may be the solution, or at least for a small segment, you may be the right solution because they're going to trust you more than someone else, even if that other person has more experience. For those folks who want to learn more about Savvy Docs or just really want to follow up and learn a little bit more about you, what's the best way to get in touch?
Best way to reach me is usually on Facebook, but also on chiagoziefawole.com or savvydoctors.co.
All right, Chiagozie, that was a lot of great fun. Good talking to you, and thank you again for coming on the show. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you for having me. It was a great time. Thanks.